E nui tonu ngā take I wehe ai ngā tūpuna I Hawaiki. Kei te mōhio hoki tātou, toko maha rātou I hoki atu, ka tere mai anō. E whia kē nei ngā reanga I pēnā. He oi anō a hoturoama, kaore I hoki atu. Nōku te waimarie ki te tūtaki I te hio ngā whanaunga no Tahiti, ko mo ohono niwa. I homai ia ngā kōrero mo tō tātou waka a tainui, ka mutu mō tātou tūpuna. Hei tāna, kei whakarawa a Hawaiki.
No te tuamutu, o whakarawa te whenua, me pāpūroa te prohiara, ti oto pai te Hawaiki no mātou, no te mopau nei, ti oto ti tei Hawaiki. E o whakarawa, ko e parau, ko e kōrero tupuna, te praura, e hitu waa I wharue, e hitu waa I wharue I a whakarawa. E hoe waa tōna rangatira, tōna hariki nyesho o hoturoa. E o hoturoa, prohia I, ona ti harue I Aotearoa, ona te whaatere a teinungu. Nō ria ti te mō parau, te praura rātou me nā whakarawa pate mō waa te wharue rā. Hare rātu I tere I nā rato ia te moana kiwa. Hoturoa no o tamate kapua te arawa no o toa. Matahatua no o toa. Oia tā whakarawa mo para whakapapa, praura no tra mo tupuna. Wo moe unei, ai ti prawahoia, Trara, I haro I Aotearoa, te praura rātou no tramo waka, no tramo tupuna.
My pride I will show, you will know who I am, yeah. I am a warrior, a survivor, and more than who.
The world has persisted many a long year, having once been set going in the appropriate motions. From these, everything else follows. Lucretius. In the beginning, about 13.7 billion years ago, all the space and all the matter and all the energy of the known universe was contained in a volume less than 1/trillionth the size of the point of a pin. Conditions were so hot, the basic forces of nature that collectively described the universe were unified. For reasons unknown, this sub-pinpoint-sized cosmos began to expand. when the universe was a piping hot 10 to the 30th degrees and a youthful 10 to the minus 43 seconds old, before which all of our theories of matter and space break down and have no meaning. Black holes spontaneously formed, disappeared, and formed again out of the energy contained within the unified field. Under these extreme conditions, in what is admittedly speculative physics, the structure of space and time became severely curved as it gurgled into a spongy foam-like form. During this epoch, phenomena described by Einstein's general theory of relativity, the modern theory of gravity, and quantum mechanics, the description of matter in its smallest scales, were indistinguishable from all around. As the universe continued to expand and cool, gravity split from the other forces. Quickly thereafter, the strong nuclear force and the electro-weak force split from each other, which was accompanied by an enormous release of stored energy that induced a rapid 30 power of 10 increase in the size of the universe. The rapid expansion of the universe, known as the epoch of inflation, stretched and smoothed out the cosmic distribution of matter and energy so that any regional variation in density became less than 1 part in 100,000. Continuing onward with what is now laboratory-confirmed physics, the universe was hot enough for photons to spontaneously convert their energy into matter-antimatter particle pairs, which immediately thereafter annihilated each other, returning their energy back to the photons. For reasons unknown, this symmetry between matter and antimatter had been broken, which led to a slight excess of matter over antimatter. For every billion antimatter particles, a billion plus 1 matter particles were born. This asymmetry was small, but really, really important for the future evolution of the universe. As the universe continued to cool, the electro-weak force split into the electromagnetic force and the weak nuclear force, completing the 4 distinct and familiar forces of nature. While the energy of the photon bath continued to drop, pairs of matter-antimatter particles could no longer be created spontaneously from the available photons. All remaining pairs of matter-antimatter particles swiftly annihilated, leaving behind a universe with 1 particle of ordinary matter for every billion photons, and no antimatter. Had this matter over antimatter asymmetry not emerged, the expanding universe would forever be composed of light and nothing else, not even astrophysicists. Over a roughly 3-minute period, protons and neutrons assembled from the annihilations to become the simplest atomic nuclei. Meanwhile, free-roving electrons thoroughly scattered the photons to and fro, creating an opaque soup of matter and energy. When the universe cooled below a few thousand degrees Kelvin, about the temperature of fireplace embers, the loose electrons moved slowly enough to get snatched from the soup by the roving nuclei to make completed atoms of hydrogen, helium, and lithium, the 3 lightest elements. The universe is now, for the first time, transparent to visible light, and these free-flying photons are visible today as the cosmic microwave background. Over the first billion years, the universe continued to expand and cool as matter gravitated into these massive concentrations we call galaxies. Between 50 and 100 billion of them formed, each containing hundreds of billions of stars that undergo thermonuclear fusion in their cores. Those stars with more than about 10 times the mass of the Sun achieved sufficient pressure and temperature in their cores to manufacture dozens of elements heavier than hydrogen, including elements that compose the planets and the life upon them. These elements would be embarrassingly useless were they to remain locked inside the star. But high-mass stars fortuitously explode, scattering their chemically enriched guts throughout the galaxy. After 7 or 8 billion years of such enrichment, an undistinguished star was born in an undistinguished region of an undistinguished galaxy in an undistinguished part of the universe, the outskirts of the Virgo supercluster. During the formation of this star system, matter condensed and accreted out of the parent cloud of gas while circling the Sun. The gas cloud from which the Sun formed contained a sufficient supply of heavy elements to form a system of planets, thousands of asteroids, and billions of comets. For several 100 million years, the persistent impacts of high-velocity comets and other leftover debris rendered molten the surfaces of formation of complex molecules. As less and less accretable matter remained in the solar system, the planet's surfaces began to cool. The one we call Earth formed in a zone around the Sun where oceans remained largely liquid in form. Had Earth been much closer to the Sun, the oceans would have vaporized. Had Earth been much farther, the oceans would have frozen. In either case, life as we know it would not have evolved. Within the chemically rich liquid oceans, by a mechanism unknown, there emerged simple anaerobic bacteria that unwittingly transformed Earth's carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere into one with sufficient oxygen to allow aerobic organisms to emerge and dominate the oceans and land. These same oxygen atoms, normally found in pairs, O2, also combined in threes to form ozone, O3, in the upper atmosphere that protects Earth's surface from most of the sun's molecule-hostile ultraviolet photons. The remarkable diversity of life on Earth, and we presume elsewhere in the universe, is owed to the cosmic abundance of carbon and the countless number of molecules. The universe had a beginning. Yes, the universe continues to evolve. And yes, every one of our body's atoms is traceable to the Big Bang and to the thermonuclear furnace within high-mass stars. We are not simply in the universe, we are part of it.
Talking to the timber specialist, he did say one way of dealing with this is to take microscopic samples from each one and have them tested.
Sure.
But of course, you know, you have to get cultural permissions to do that kind of interference with taonga, as well as, you know, the museums themselves. And the communities have actually grown up around the one at Auckland Museum, and also a Ngāpuhi community that lives in Sydney. So you could go down that track of proving which one was the one, but then, you know, what about these communities that have formed around them? And, you know, this gets to the heart of belief systems and the discussion that we're having today about what people believe in and what's important to them.
The missionaries ended up sending a lot of taonga out of Aotearoa. Now, was that collection or confiscation?
It was exchange in the first instance.
For what?
For iron and blankets, particularly in the early years of the Rangihawa mission, which was that first one that was founded in 1814 on my whānau's land. So Māori were very keen on acquiring iron to turn them into tools. And also they brought with them taonga that were perhaps rapidly moving out of the utilitarian use. So, for example, stone tools were given bone fish hooks in exchange for iron to make iron fish hooks. And the missions had a huge impact on Māori dress. So there's a lot of collecting of what are described as mats, but what we would know today as kaitaka, or Māori flax woven cloaks that were given to the missionaries. And Hongi's self-portrait bust, although it was made in Australia, was the first one to be sent to the UK, to London. And the person who received it, Josiah Pratt, who was the secretary of the Church Missionary Society, wrote back and said, "We're forming a museum, we want more. Ask your missionaries to send us whatever they can get their hands on. Give us a description of their function and we'll put it on display in our museum to raise funds." So there was that aspect of collecting, but also a number of missionaries, I wouldn't call them side hustles, they were more like obligations to send their patrons who had in some ways had sponsored them to be here. The patrons were expecting something back, so the missionaries were collecting also to send particularly samples of flax, because it was thought that perhaps in the UK there could be a new industry in flax milling, but also other taonga to these patrons, predominantly in the UK.
You've said that there's no evidence that Christian teachings contributed to a fatal impact on Māori art across the country through orchestrated suppression. But is the acquisition of taonga, in a way, suggesting that they were trying to undermine Māori art and belief in...
These canopies were crucial on all those corners in those awa. So if you were from a mātauranga Māori-centric thinking person, you think, how can I keep this environment here so that these fish and these tuna and whatever's, the karawaka and whatever's in these waterways, how will they survive? This is how they will survive. We won't touch that environment because they're safe in there. Fish like cover, né? But if you come from a worldview that says, hey, I'm the boss here, and this blimmin' waterway, you know, it's causing flooding in our area here, right? So what we're going to do is they look ugly, those trees and all that rubbish around these corners. We're going to clear them out. They're going to chop these trees down and, oh, we're going to stop this flooding. I think we straighten the awa up, put a straight line through. They do that in Auckland. Engineers with 3 PhDs do things like that. No? And I stand there and they're celebrating, and I go, come from a different worldview, you see. Because when I look at it, I say, you've just destroyed an ecosystem. Yeah? So, te rā te ahua te worldview run, it drives you to do certain things. So, ngā kai tiaki katoa, kei rota, oh, well, it's not a kōrero about kai tiaki. Yeah, but that's a debate for a wānanga, I suppose. But koutou katoa, e kaha ana te mahi te whakarau ora mai, moana tū I te repo, our swamplands. Te mahi a moana tū I te repo was to be the intermediary between that pakanga, ne? So when Tangaroa sends all these waters up, gouges out the land and drags all those trees like you saw at Tolaga Bay, moana tū I te repo was there to stop them rushing out into the sea, stop the silting and stop all that paru that flows out into the moana. Over 90% of moana tū I te repo wiped out. Yeah? But no one has a voice and no one speaks for her to bring her back. Because without her, we are going to struggle to get our waterways right. Yeah? And that's going back to that. And then so the other mahi too from moana tū I te repo, that she was like a wet sponge. Yeah? And in a dry period, that wet sponge will get squeezed out. And she will push that water out to rehydrate the rivers and the waterways. Without moana tū ki te repo, you're not going to get, all you'll see will be dust bowls in years to come. So this is coming from a mātauranga Māori point of view. So if you draw from that mātauranga Māori or mātauranga Hokianga or wherever you want, every iwi have their own mātauranga, their kōrero, their pūrākau. So don't accept this as the definitive explanation of this, because every hapu and every iwi have their kōrero. But this is what I was taught. So I'm just going to pass this on, and me he ana wā rapua mai te me he hakatika. So we get this, so if you hold that worldview, you also hold a view that we are connected to the environment. Ne? And how do we do that? Well, there's a kōrero, ka hore he aha I hangātia I ahu noa mai rānei, kia noho wehe I tēnei au. Aha kua matangaro ka mōhiotia te mauri. Nothing was ever created in this world to live in isolation, so that even a hidden face can be detected by its impact on something. Ne? So what I'm going to do quickly here, because I heard the words come up, we're going to talk about Māori. Ne? He matangaro te Māori. Can't be seen. Yeah. So when people go out and say, oh, we're going to restore the Māori of this waterway, I say, oh, you must be atua. If you come from that world, the other worldview on the other side puts humans at the center of our taiao. Yeah. So if you're at the center of the taiao, you're the boss. Yeah. You decide what needs to happen. You make all the decisions around what this taiao is going to look like, because you're the boss. You're at the middle. You were given permission. Yeah, I think it was back in Abraham's day, was it? Who goes to church? Yeah, I give you dominion over all animals, birds, you know, that type of kōrero.
Open up, I say! Open that door!